Hello, I'm Shakila Shams Dostum, and we will be discussing this topic with Dr. Samir Angar, an expert in international relations who is joining us online. Mr. Angar, hello. To what extent can the draft resolution of the Doha summit influence the change in the approach of Arab countries towards normalizing relations with Israel?
In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, you alone we worship and you alone we ask for help. Greetings and regards to you, Ms. Shams, and to the dear viewers of Yak TV. If we examine the issue closely, when the Israeli attack happened, followed by the emergency summit, then the resolution and other related matters, it all reminds me of the year 1981. When Israel carried out a similar attack on Iraq, we saw that likewise an emergency session was convened. Similarly, the Arab countries and other Muslim countries that are members of the OIC and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation gathered together. 6 people sat around a table and condemned the attack. This attack, which was carried out in 1981 against Iraq, was also followed by an agreement or a resolution being issued. In the end, that attack too was consigned to oblivion. If we examine the situation a little more closely, we can see that in the year 1985, there was also another very similar attack that occurred. This time the target was the nation of Tunisia. At that time as well, the leaders of Arab and Muslim countries gathered together under one umbrella. They quickly issued a resolution, and in the end, there was no follow-up. No counterattack was carried out by either the Islamic countries or the Arab countries, and that too was consigned to the annals of history, which we are now revisiting. And now, just a few days ago, when a similar attack happened against Qatar, the same response was repeated once again. That is, Israel carries out its attack, and these same countries come together. They gather around a table and issue a resolution, a joint resolution. But in practice, we see that they have no military response at all, nor do they take any other action. They just pursue policies or diplomatic relations. No, and that's it. They don't pursue any other positions, and then they just count the days or keep track of when Israel will attack another country after Qatar, so they can convene their assemblies and issue another resolution.
Sir, do you think this attack is a sign of a change in Israel's military and diplomatic strategy in the region?
As I have mentioned in my previous programs, for over a century, Israel and especially the United States have had a long-term plan or a very time-consuming strategy for the Middle East. The United States wanted to establish itself in the Middle East or even have its own country there. In 1947, this plan was presented by the United Nations, and then in 1948, Israel was established. Later, if we look closely, between 1969 and 1972, Israel acquired nuclear weapons, or in other words, the atomic bomb. This means that the United States is implementing its plans in the Middle East one after another, and we saw that even in 1967, it was Israel that attacked and occupied certain other areas. For example, the Sinai regions, the West Bank, even the Golan Heights on the Syrian side, and other Arab territories, countries that are near and far from it, were occupied. That is, Israel is using the same old strategy and is pursuing to build greater Israel with the help of the United States. For them, it makes no difference whether they attack Gaza today or even Qatar. If these other countries remain like this, meaning if they continue to be this indifferent, I can tell you with complete confidence that it won't be long before Israel attacks other Arab countries or other countries in the region again. This is neither their last attack, nor was it their first.
How do you assess the reaction of Arab countries, especially the UAE, to this attack? You mentioned it before, but we want to know more clearly. In your opinion, is this a sign of moving away from the Abraham Accords?
We see that currently Arab countries and countries in the Islamic world are divided into 3 groups. In relation to the issue of Israel and Qatar, or the issue of Gaza and Israel, or the issue of Iran and Israel has also been divided into 3 groups. There are some countries, and most of them emphasize that they are against Israel. That is, they emphasize military action. Most of these countries are like Iran, Indonesia, Malaysia, and a few other countries. Their emphasis is that action must be taken by force. But there are some other countries that are taking very cautious steps. For example, Egypt signed the Camp David peace treaty with Israel in 1999. It is also taking very cautious steps, or likewise, if we look, there are certainly some other countries to consider as well. For example, the nation of Turkey officially recognized the state of Israel way back in the year 1949. It too is proceeding very cautiously. Sometimes it sides with one party, and sometimes it sides with other countries. And likewise, if we look at the countries that after 2020 or in 2020 joined the Abraham Accords with Israel, such as the United Arab Emirates, Sudan, Bahrain, Jordan, and a few other countries. These countries are also proceeding very cautiously. That is, on the one hand, they have strategic alliances and long-standing friendships with Israel, which they have signed, and in the region they even act as protectors of others' interests and have exchanged ambassadors. They too are moving forward very cautiously, and we see the next scenario unfolding. Some countries from the Islamic world are almost completely absent from the scene. That is, they are indifferent, not included in the first group that is anti-Israel, nor in the second group that acts cautiously. These countries are indifferent and absent, and they don't even issue a statement. Only if they are asked in some press conference, their officials will say, "We are not in favor of these attacks," as is the case in some Central Asian countries or Azerbaijan and other countries. So these three scenarios are up for discussion in the Islamic world.
So it seems that the UN statements cannot stop Israel's adventurous actions in the region. Most of these countries are, in fact, supporters of Israel and the United States, and even those countries that oppose them do not have the ability to stand up to Israel. So where is the region headed?
If we take a closer look, if we look at the United Nations even briefly, the United Nations itself also needs a more serious review. That is, reforms need to be introduced. It needs to be inclusive of everyone. In other words, right now, the United Nations is not inclusive. The United Nations must also become inclusive. There should be a review of the Security Council because we see that one pole has taken over most of the Security Council. Currently, other poles have emerged, such as the economic poles of Germany, Japan, India, or Brazil. And likewise, the United Nations in its current state does not meet the needs of humanity. It has strayed from its objectives. This too needs to be reviewed again. There is also the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which includes more than 55 Islamic countries. These include Arab countries as well as other non-Arab and Persian countries. They have always issued joint statements in response to such attacks. They have taken action. That is, they acted in a way that demonstrated their unity in writing or at least on paper. But if we look at it in practice, the Islamic countries in reality do not have unity or alignment. If, for example, two countries like Iran, Malaysia, and Indonesia are in favor of attacking Israel so that it serves as a lesson. But there are other countries like Egypt, Jordan, Bahrain, as well as the UAE or Saudi Arabia that oppose such a conflict. They want the issue to be resolved through diplomatic means. Overall, we can definitely say that if these kinds of unilateral attacks by Israel are going to continue, and Israel consistently acts like a destructive cancerous cell in the wider region or in the Persian Gulf area, if this current and highly volatile situation is allowed to continue without any significant de-escalation, it is reasonable to conclude that in the end, the entire strategic area of the Persian Gulf, and looking at it more broadly, the whole of the Middle East, and even the specific countries surrounding Israel in that region, will soon find themselves falling into a much deeper and more complex crisis than what we are currently witnessing. Because let me point something out to you. The United States has always wanted to stir up activity in these Middle Eastern countries because most mineral resources like oil, lithium, and others are found in these regions. In other words, the US is still following its old policy of muddying the waters to catch fish. When these countries were destroyed or their governments collapsed or other internal problems arose, like in Libya, Yemen, Syria, or other countries that we are witnessing with our own eyes right now. If such a situation arises again, they can very easily take away those mines, which are worth trillions of dollars, and also maintain the upper hand in the region. So in the final analysis, we can conclude that the US actually wants more chaos to erupt in the Middle East. More chaos and disorder will erupt because they can very well secure their economic interests from the Middle East. And this very country, Israel, serves as a military tool or an instrument of chaos for the United States.